Thank you. Alec Rowley to be followed by Andy Wayman.
Made comment that progress has been made in terms of tackling and driving down the virus, but I do worry that there are those who are taking their eye off the ball, and that is visible as you see people, for example, going into shops without using the mask. So we need to be vigilant, and and Labour will continue to support the government where we need powers. I also welcome the extension that is proposed to the Coronavirus Act, and specifically housing. Shelter Scotland, Citizens Advice Scotland have put forward a very strong case that Labour supports for extending the legislation to ensure that we do prevent evictions until April next year. But would he agree that, given that council housing allocations have been frozen in most parts of the country since the COVID crisis came in, that the housing crisis that Shelter Scotland talked about before COVID is continuing to become even greater, and more people are finding it difficult to access housing. At the same time, Presiding Officer, the need to drive the economy should be driven by investment in infrastructure, and that housing should be a national infrastructure priority so that we can get the houses that we need, the jobs, the skills, the training. Would he seek for the government to come forward when they look at the extension of this legislation to have a wider debate on how we need to tackle the housing crisis in Scotland and grow our economy at the same time?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I'm quite sure that the Housing Minister, Kevin Stewart, will want to bring to this chamber debate and discussion a whole range of issues, and I'm sure he will note that that is a request that is brought here, and I'm sure he'll be sympathetic to the request to discuss all issues of housing. I have to say, in terms of this Act, the narrow responsibility that I'm bringing to this chamber for this Act, we are very mindful of some of the arguments that I think Alec Rowley is putting. The issues are not as clear-cut as they might be. There is undoubtedly a need to continue to protect tenants, and we recognise that. And yesterday, we laid regulations for a new requirement that tribunals have to consider whether a landlord has undertaken certain actions to support tenants before eviction. So we're taking actions out with and in top of the bill. But also I recognise from representations from the Housing Association in my own area issues about allocation which have not been able to be addressed because of the lockdown and because of issues in terms of how housing associations, for example, operate. So there are some complicated issues in here, but I know that Kevin Stewart will want to bring forward proposals as part of the renewal that meet need, that meet demand, but they're not the only issues that are relevant to housing at the moment, and I'm sure that he will take account of that from Alec Rowley.